Why wait to say? At least I did it my way. Lie way too faced, but in my heart I understand. I made my move, and it was all about you. Now I feel so far removed. You are the one thing in my way. You are the one thing in my way. You are the one thing in my way. You are the
you so much for coming out. We'll get started in about 10 minutes. Thank you so much for your patience. This also does not cut any time out of the interview, so we will go over about 10 minutes. So thank you guys so much.
Such a deep
for this wonderful talk we're about to host. I'm Evan Burfield. I'm the co-founder here at 1776. We're a global innovation network focused on connecting up amazing startups tackling the world's most important challenges with institutions around the world that are looking to innovate. And within the context of that mission, we couldn't have a better example of an institution that is looking to transform the way they do business, to reach out to new sources of innovation, than the Department of Defense. We're incredibly pleased to host Secretary Carter, as well as the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, to talk about innovation and the world we see around us. With that, Secretary, Jeff, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Thank you all for having us here. We at The Atlantic are very pleased to have a continuing relationship with the Secretary, with the Defense Department. We cover them rigorously and will continue to doing so even after you leave. Thank you to 1776 and to everyone on the Atlantic team. I'm going to try to divide this up into three parts, Mr. Secretary. The first is talking about your relationship with the tech industry and what it means for the future of American defense. Second part, we want to talk about some of the some recent events and everything that means. Third thing we'd like to do, since you're coming to the end of a term, we're coming to the end of a presidential term, is give us a little bit of a tour of the world, some of the hotspots, some of the challenges for the next president and the next president after that. And then in our fourth hour, we'll take questions. I actually have a large number of questions already from the audience, and I want to lean heavily on the tech questions. But let's start in the, what you might call the Silicon Valley area, even though we're not in Silicon Valley. Let's talk about your pretty revolutionary approach to managing a relationship with the tech community. You have said that you would like to see the Pentagon as agile in some ways as the tech startup community. I've been in the Pentagon. It's a lot of things, but it doesn't seem very agile. How do you actually transform the place so that you're getting in ideas fast and you're applying them even faster?
The first is a tradition that goes back many decades and is one of the reasons why our military is the finest in the world. And that is that we have always had a close connection between our technology-intensive and innovative community in America, which is unrivaled in the world, and this incredibly important mission of providing security for our people and leaving a better world to our children. And that, you can go back to World War II, you can go back to the jet engine, the communication satellite, the internet itself. All of these things were things that were done in partnership between the innovative community of the United States and our institution. So it does go back a long ways, and I don't want to suggest that we don't know how to do it or haven't done it. What's different today is that a lot of, let me put it this way, Jeff. When I started out, I'm a physicist. When I started out in this business, most of the technology of consequence was developed in the United States. And most of that in government programs.
When you say technology, you mean universally?
Yes,
yeah.
Period. And that's, we're still a big force, but I have to recognize that a lot of technology is commercial and global, and a lot of our innovators are outside of our walls. A lot of our innovators don't know us, have never worked with us, even have an uneasy relationship with us. And so I need to reach out and try to build back a bridge to that community, get them inspired by our mission, change the way we do business enough that they that we're suitable to the modern innovative lifestyle, the modern innovative practices, and so forth. So it's not a birthright that we're the best at protecting ourselves with technology. I got to work on that. All my predecessors did that, and I think my successors and my successors' successors and my successors' successors will need to do the same.
The assumption I've always made is that we're so far ahead in technology that it's very, very hard for other countries and their tech complexes to catch up. But who do you worry about eating our lunch? Do you worry about China and Russia, two traditional adversaries, ever becoming in a position where they could actually be faster and more agile than we are?
There's nobody who is going to come close to the United States in terms of comprehensive military power anytime soon. But make no mistake, they're all very competitive. Our enemies are, and our potential enemies are extremely competitive. For whether they're terrorists who are working hard, each and every day, all day, to try to think of some way that they can do harm to us, right up to the potential high-end opponents who, yes, have a technological lag, but are determined to close that. And so it's a competitive world, even as it is competitive in the commercial world. It is competitive in the security world. And if we relax our guard and we just assume that it's a birthright to be the best, that gap's going to close. I can't allow that to happen.
Let me ask you a question. There are a lot of young innovators in this audience. A lot of people have a certain perception of Pentagon culture, Defense Department culture. We have other perceptions of the innovation culture. I'm not suggesting that anyone here has ever smoked pot on a regular basis, but there's a possibility that you might have one or two pot-smoking libertarians in the larger tech community. How do you respond? Again, I'm not making any assumptions. How do you bridge that gap between traditional security needs and people who are non-conventional from the Pentagon perspective? And the second part of that question is, did Snowden and the controversy surrounding Snowden set you back in building bigger and better bridges to tech companies?
Start with the second part first. There's no question that Snowden set it back. It created a tremendous amount of suspicion, concern, and disinclination to engage. And I'm realistic enough to know that. My view, I do not condone what Edward Snowden did, and I might as well tell you why. There are 300 million of us in this country, and no one has the authority or the warrant to arrogate to him or herself the ability to use their position and their access to privileged information for their own purposes. That's just not on. None of us can do that. We join, and we're part of 300 million people. And so I don't accept that anyone who arrogates to him or herself the ability to so fundamentally affect everyone else when they have no warrant to do that. And secondly, whatever you think of the cause, and now again, get to the cause, which is, we conduct ourselves extremely carefully with respect to the collection of intelligence. And that's a whole other subject to go into. But the harm done was to our international relationships, to our relationship with the technology community. I'm just very open and I'm realistic about that. It is what it is. And also, by the way, our companies overseas, because this is used by our competitors as a way of edging out our own innovative companies. So it's very harmful in lots of ways. That said, I simply have to work with that and try to build bridges back of trust and understanding and a willingness to meet people halfway. And to build that trust, and we're doing that. And I find that innovators are people who want to make a difference in the world. And one of the ways they can make a difference is by protecting our people and civilization. And so when they get seized with the mission and they feel that they can contribute to the mission in a way that is compatible with everything else they believe in, and there's every opportunity to do that in this country and with the Defense Department, then it really takes off. The mission, there's nothing better than waking up in the morning and being part of this fundamentally important thing. There are a lot of wonderful things in life, but none of them can be had unless we're safe. And that's what we do. And that's what I tell kids, I'm off today, I'm going to go down and spend a few days seeing troops, and I always tell them, you get to get up in the morning and know that you're part of something bigger than yourself. And everybody else in the country gets up and they kiss their kids, and they drop them at school, or they go to work, and they live their lives, and they dream their dreams, and all the things that make life full. And that's not possible without security.
Go to the part about marijuana just for a minute.
Well, we have rules that protect us in a counterintelligence and security point of view. Our rules are sensible enough and flexible enough that they take into account modern lifestyle. They're not as up to date as always as they should be, but we work hard at making sure that they are. So it's very different from when I started out. So nobody should assume that they can't serve. I think you can give us a try.
Right. I'm going to stay on tech for one more minute. We were speaking about this earlier. The assumption has always been that innovation comes from within the system. You're saying that you've reached a tipping point, maybe, where a lot of innovation is coming from outside the system. Can you give us one or two examples of hardcore defense applications that have come help?
Let me just say, I don't know that we've reached a tipping point. We do a lot of really important.
And DARPA's still DARPA. I mean, the activities.
We do things that nobody has an interest in doing except us, because there's no commercial application. I mean, nobody's building hypersonic vehicles because there's nothing to do with that. We need to do that, but nobody else is going to do that. So not everything we do can be bought or absorbed from the outside. But yeah, I'll be very specific. We have our Defense Digital Service, which is our way of bringing people in who are from the outside, work in all our most important companies. Somewhere here is Chris Lynch, by the way. Chris, who's the director of the Defense Digital Service, he leads a bunch of people who walk around looking like him in the Pentagon all day, and they're not there for life, Jeff. They come in for a year or so, and they work on things like protecting our nuclear command and control system from being hacked. That's a pretty important example, right? So that's the kind of thing where best practices and the talent of people from the outside have made a very material difference to what we're doing.
Right. Let me turn to some recent events. The first question is a simple question. I'm sorry. We have tech issues. The first question is a simple question. Has the transition team of the president-elect been in touch with you yet?
We have procedures in place. The transition team hasn't arrived at the Pentagon yet. These practices, by the way, were settled upon weeks ago before the election was concluded. This is normal. And I just want to say, Jeff,
but you haven't met with the transition team yet.
They have not come yet. They're expected, I think, sometime this week, but that's up to them. But we're ready to welcome them and to help the new team to get started. And I want to emphasize that because this has been going on for 240 years. I myself have witnessed transitions in the past, and I am extremely proud of two things about us. The first is that not only and I have been extremely careful about this all these many months of the election campaign, but all of our senior leadership have adhered to our tradition to stand apart from the political process. And so you haven't heard us talking. That's an important principle in this country, and I'm extremely proud that we've done that. And then the second thing is I am committed to an orderly transition to our new commander-in-chief, President-elect Trump. I will, that is something, all my predecessors, my entire life, and for generations before that have done. So we're going to do it to standard, we're going to do it warmly, we're going to do it to the best of our ability so that we hand off things to the new administration in the best way we possibly can.
So you've spent an incredible amount of time building multinational coalitions to fight ISIS, most noticeably, but the other areas, obviously. The president-elect spent a lot of time during the campaign disparaging NATO, disparaging alliances. The next time you talk to our allies in NATO or elsewhere, what are you going to tell them?
Well, now I'm going to repeat what I just said, which is I'm not going to speak about, and I certainly cannot speak for, the new administration. I can certainly speak about what NATO is doing these days. NATO was founded to fight the Cold War, and it did that. And I remember the days when the Cold War ended and we all were saying, well, what's NATO going to do now? Its raison d'etre is gone. It turned out that along came something shortly thereafter, which was first of all, NATO began the process of rebuilding Europe and reintegrating countries, including reaching out to Russia, by the way. Was an important thing, and I was part of that. I was in the Defense Department in the 90s, and this was my responsibility. But along came the Balkans, for example, and the slaughter of people in the Balkans, and NATO rose to that challenge and that was a example of a community of nations that saw things similarly, saw a need, and met it together. Then subsequently, after 9/11, NATO worked with us in Afghanistan and has been working with us ever since to make sure that Afghanistan doesn't once again become a place from which attacks on America or France or Germany or the United Kingdom or anywhere else in Europe are launched from. So it is a community of nations that have effectively worked together, but it's constantly in a process of change.
But let me rephrase it slightly to say, what is your message to your NATO allies going forward about American stability and American continuity?
Well, I have no warrant, obviously, to speak for a future administration. The only thing I would say is engage with the new administration, work with them, stay committed to the values and the principles that we have stood for. Remember that we have a lot of people who are trying to attack all of us collectively, and we're much better at protecting ourselves if we can find a way to work together.
Let's talk about the operation in Iraq and also Syria. I would like to hear a quick status report on that, and I would also like to hear, and it's not just criticism that came from the president-elect, but this idea that it was wrong to telegraph an attack going forward, was that we should have launched a, quote, sneak attack on Mosul rather than telegraph this. Tell us about the build-up and tell us about where we are at the moment.
Well, the campaign has been, is one that we designed and launched. Myself, I'm the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Joe Dunford, and the president approved a year ago now. And we have, and its objective in Iraq and Syria is to destroy ISIL there, because we need to destroy the fact and the idea that there can be an Islamic State based upon this ideology. And it needs to start there. I just want to say that it's there. That is necessary. It's not sufficient. So we also need to operate against it and are wherever it arises, Libya, Afghanistan, and so forth. And then absolutely we need to protect our own people. And we do that every single day, protect ourselves from attack. But to get back to Iraq and Syria, this was a campaign plan that we put together last fall. Mosul is Iraq's second largest city. And it and Raqqa are the two central nodes of ISIL. So they have to be destroyed. And so our plan very early on involved the systematic envelopment of those two forces, of those two cities, and the destruction of ISIL within them. So for a year now, we've been planning that and working with the Iraqi security forces, which include the Kurdish Peshmerga, to take the Mosul example. And it's important, we're using them and we're enabling them. It's important that I mention, Jeff, that what we've learned from 15 years is that we can defeat ISIL, but this time we want to make sure they stay defeated, right? And for them to stay defeated, local forces must consolidate the defeat, must keep the peace after we've won the war. That's why we're working with the Iraqi security forces and the Peshmerga. So this campaign and its objectives of Mosul and Raqqa have been quite clear. They're absolutely necessary, and we built up the combat power to do them very systematically according to a plan that, as I said, we put together a year ago.
And the secrecy or sneak attack component of this was not salient in overall success.
There are secret tactics involved there, but the fact that we're going to Mosul and Raqqa is clear because they're the two biggest cities,
right.
And it's actually important that the enemy know that, and that ISIL everywhere else know that we intend and will destroy them.
Why is it important for them to know specifically
because
that?
Because the inspiration factor around the world, that's why it's so important to destroy them in Iraq and Syria, so that people know this is not a happening thing. This is something that's going to be stamped out.
Right. Let me ask you a related question from an audience member. How would you rate the biggest threats to the United States over the next 5 years? North Korea, Russia, China in the South China Sea, and then add in the sort of the Islamic State threat.
You left out Iran. And
they ran out of room on the card.
You left out ISIL. Now these are all very different situations.
And answer this in the length of a tweet if you can. I know it's an essay.
Different situations. By no means are we at war with all of these and so forth. But if you're saying what are the things that we stand vigilant against, those are the sort of big five. ISIL, malign activity by Iran in the Gulf and the deterring attack upon our friends and allies. North Korea, our slogan there is "Fight Tonight." We've been there for decades and decades, and every single night we stand guard to deter attack against South Korea and attack upon ourselves from North Korea. Russia and China are different situations where we have a mixed relationship, where we work together, where we see common purpose, but there are also respects in which those relationships are competitive, and being the Defense Department, we're realistic about that. And then, Jeff, we're at, those are the five that are on our minds today. But life is long and our history is long. So as I think in the spirit of this audience about my successor's successor and decades down the road, and one reason to be agile is we're pretty good at not knowing what comes next. And so I have to be realistic that these are the things that I focus on today, but I also need to make sure that we're ready for whatever things that we cannot foresee today, as ready as we can possibly be.
Right. This is a question that I see in various forms throughout these cards. How can DoD or federal contracting in general keep up with the speed
not technology that is unique to defense. I'd be crazy if I were not farming what is outside our walls.
Do you want these people out here to come in to you, or do you not care anymore?
Realistic about, well, though I want to be careful about come in doesn't mean you have to spend your whole life. You have to give your whole life to it. That's why the Defense Digital Service is so important. People who come there are giving it a try. They come in for one project or 1 year, and then they go back to the companies from which they came, which are all the marquee companies. And I know they're not all going to stay. And by the way, Ash Carter got into this years and years ago, and an elder in my field of theoretical particle physics, who had been part of the Manhattan Project, said, you have a responsibility, given the knowledge that you have, to contribute to the greater good. And I want you to take 1 year off. 1 year, I don't know, whatever, 35 years later, here I am. And I did, and it stuck with me for two reasons. First of all, I found out, yeah, I actually could make a difference. I knew something that mattered. And so I felt like I was counting. And the other thing was that what I was working on was about the most important thing you could possibly work on. Take those two things together, that what you do is having an effect, and what you're working on really matters. That's about as magical as it can be for somebody who is innovative, and so I was hooked. I don't expect everybody to get hooked. So I'm trying to make us permeable enough that people can come and go. Some people will want to serve in uniform, some people will want to serve in the civil service, and that's great, and I want them to. That's why I'm going down to basic training in Texas day after tomorrow. But I know not everybody's going to do that, not everybody in this audience, but give us a try, work on something, and even if that's all you ever do, for the rest of your life, you'll look back and say, you know what, you can tell people, I did something that really, really mattered. And if I had stopped with the first thing I worked on, which is an old Cold War project, probably most of you wouldn't even know what it is, I'd be proud of that. I'd be proud even now if I'd not done nothing else since.
Time for one more question, please.
I'm sorry, am I not holding it up okay? You can give him a different mic, but if he doesn't know how to hold it, it's still not going to work.
What is the best path for startups to get the information they need from the DoD to design and market their products? The questions are coming extraordinarily specific to me, by the way.
Yeah, no, this is good. And the place one of the first place I'd send people right now is our Defense Innovation Unit Experimental, DIUX. Now I have 3 outposts of that are in 3 of our technology hubs. I intend to create more. But it doesn't matter where they're located. They're a place for you to connect. And what they'll do is help you understand how to connect with the customers. And we have lots of different customers doing lots of different things. How to work with the government. And the government is just another customer. What makes us unusual is this, which is that it's not our money. And we know it's not our money. So when you work with the government, you're working with people who know it's not their money. It's your money. It's the taxpayers' money. And that is one of the reasons why we have some rules and so forth. And I'm trying to make sure those rules don't slow us down unnecessarily. But I have to respect the rules because it's not our money. And so we need to be fair. We need to have competition and so forth. That's just part of the way the government does stuff because it's not our money.
I don't want to have you nerd out too much right now, but I do have this. It's easy, I know, on occasion, yeah. But I do want to know something about autonomous warfare, and I want you to talk a little bit in sort of almost a science fiction vein, although maybe it's not science fiction anymore. When do we reach the point where we're not going to need pilots anymore in our planes? When do we reach the point where the battle space is taken over by robots? And what are the technological and moral complications associated with this?
Well, we're flying airplanes right now.
No, I'm talking about when is the end of pilots is what I'm talking about.
We don't have people in them. And systems in the warfare area, like elsewhere in life, get more and more powerful and capable of making tactical decisions. But the thing I want to say to you, Jeff, is we are very clear, and I actually, when I was Deputy Secretary of Defense 4 years ago, I now issued a directive to the entire department which reminded them that when it comes to the use of force on behalf of the American people, there always needs to be a human being involved in making those decisions. And I think that's an incredibly important principle. So there can be more and more automation built into a system, but when it comes to the very solemn job of using force to protect the American people, I think I'm absolutely certain that our public officials and our public will always insist that there be a human being involved in making those decisions.
Let me ask you one final question about America's role in the world. And this is not a question that's necessarily specific to the election that we've just had, but you and I have talked before about this president and his foreign policy doctrine, national security doctrines, presidents before that. Since World War II, the United States has played a role. Sometimes it's played it well, sometimes less well, but it's played a role as the global guarantor of stability, especially in the three regions of the world that are most crucial to American national security interests: East Asia, Middle East, and Europe. Do you believe that, based on what you see about the world as it's organized, the rise of other powers, the proclivities and dispositions of the American people, do you believe that this is something that continues inexorably, or are we heading, in your view, into a kind of different direction about the role that America is going to play?
No, I do think much of it will continue. We remain a exceptionally strong country with an amazingly bright future and innovative people, tremendous military strength, but that's not our only strength. We have a very resilient economy. We have the best innovation system in the entire world. And then there's something else, which is, I always tell the troops, I say, let me tell you what I hear from foreign leaders who work with you. They like working with you. And why is that? It's because you conduct yourselves in a very decent way. And the things that we stand for matter to people and appeal to people. And, it's not going to be 1945 again, where the rest of the world is in ruins and the United States is the only power left standing. And we actually have worked now for 70 years since World War II to help other nations to rise and prosper, and we welcome that. But we also stand up for the things that we stand up for, and we remain a very influential, not just positive, but an influential power in the world. And I expect that to continue.
Keeping America great. Thank you very much, Secretary
Thanks
Carter.
very
I
much.
appreciate it.
Appreciate
you
Thank
very
you all
much
for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jeff. Thank you very much, Secretary. The Secretary is going to meet with a few of our startups. So if everybody can remain seated, we're going to create an aisle right that way, and then you all get to be free to go. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Good to see you.
If everybody could just please remain seated just for another moment, please. Thank you guys so much for coming, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.